Last time we spoke about the finale of the Northern Expedition, the reunification of China. In May, the NRA advanced from the Yellow River bridgehead despite losing access to the Tianjin-Pukou Railway, forcing a 60-mile march. General Chen Taiyuan captured Taizhou on the 13th as the NRA cleared northern Shandong. Then they converged upon Beijing, with Feng Yusung's 2nd Collective Army and Yan Qishan's 3rd Collective Army advancing from different directions. Yan Qishan fought the NPA, recapturing territories and capturing Nankou, which led to a speculation that it would be him to enter Beijing first. Despite NPA counterattacks, the NRA forces continued their advance. By late May, the NRA's combined efforts and internal NPA issues led to a general retreat of the NPA forces. On June the 6th, Yan Qishan's troops entered Beijing. The NPA's Zhang Zolin was assassinated by Japanese officers, leading to a power shift over to his son, Zhang Shuliang, who would be aligned with Chiang Kai-shek. By December of 1928, China was unified under the KMT. This episode is The Chinese Civil War Draws First Blood. Welcome back to the Fall and Rise of China podcast. I'm your dutiful host, Greg Watson. But before we begin, I just want to remind you all that this podcast is only made possible through the efforts of Kings and Generals over at YouTube. Perhaps you want to learn a bit more about the history of Asia? Kings and Generals has an assortment of episodes on the history of Asia and much more, so give them a look over at YouTube. So please subscribe to Kings and Generals over at YouTube and continue to help us produce this content by checking out www.patreon.com/kingsandgenerals. And hey, don't forget about our sister podcast over at the Pacific War Week by Week podcast, written and narrated by me. And after all of that, if you're still hungry for some more history, why don't you check out my personal channel, the Pacific War channel, found at YouTube and all major podcast platforms. Over on the YouTube channel, I just released a full documentary on General William Rupertus during World War II. As for podcasts, I am now on episode 6 of my ongoing series about the North Africa campaign during World War II. And hey, if you want to further support me, please check out my Patreon account at www.patreon.com/thepacificwarchannel. Over there, for as little as $2 a month, you get access to the exclusive Patreon podcast, early access to all the content I make, and voting rights for what subjects I'll tackle next. So I said a few times during the Northern Expedition that I wanted to push aside the emerging Chinese Civil War. Although we loosely covered a lot of the major events of it, this episode is going to try and narrow and focus it down. Now please note, up until this point, I have to admit I have been using sources that were either skewed towards the Chinese nationalist views or were trying to be as non-biased as they can be. For some of these episodes, I intentionally am going to be using some CCP-aligned sources, and I will try my best to balance things out. Also, a large part of this is going to be a retelling of the Shanghai Massacre, but more from the viewpoint of the CCP. Now, all the way back in 1926, Chiang Kai-shek had managed to seize power over the Kuomintang. He exerted control over the party and the army as he unleashed the Northern Expedition. By November the 9th, Chiang Kai-shek had set up new headquarters in Nanchang. Chiang Kai-shek was determined to purge the party of communists, and he began to do so here. He began recruiting a large number of right-wing Kuomintang members, such as Dao Jitao and Wu Deicheng. Dao Jitao was a member of the Kuomintang Central Executive Committee, and he had served as the minister of the KMT's propaganda department. After the death of Dr. Sun Yat-sen, Dao Jitao had actively promoted an anti-communist movement, drawing support from warlords, right-wingers, and those the CCP would describe as imperialists. In May of 1925, with the support of Chiang Kai-shek, Dao Jitao began an anti-communist campaign in Shanghai. He ran 2 successful pamphlets, loosely translated in English as The Philosophical Foundation of Sun Yat-senism and The National Revolution and the Chinese Kuomintang. Both worked to promote the teachings of Confucius and Mencius, while also distorting Sun Yat-sen's thoughts. Dao Jitao was arguing that Sun Yat-sen's ideology chiefly came from Confucianism instead of Western philosophy, and that in fact the man was a traditionalist. He twisted Sun Yat-sen's 3 principles, castrating them of revolutionary content. All of this quickly became a banner for the Kuomintang right-wingers to carry out anti-communist activities. After Chiang Kai-shek arrived in Nanchang, he immediately invited him to go north to jointly plan the purge of the party and anti-communism actions. Wu Taichung joined Dao Qitao. He was the director of the Guangzhou Public Security Bureau and a well-known KMT right-winger. Prior to the Zhongshan ship incident, Wu Taichung stated that he had suggested to Chiang Kai-shek that they impose sanctions upon the CCP. In his words, "With the registration materials of the Special Household Registration of our Public Security Bureau, we can immediately arrest a dozen of the main Communist Party members and then use a ship to transport them to a small island near Zhongshan County, or send them to Shanghai. As for the minor members, they will be temporarily detained." To this, Chiang Kai-shek said, "I will think about it first." After the Zhongshan incident, Chiang Kai-shek pretended to dismiss him from his post, but in truth, he specially invited him later to Nanchang and dispatched him to Japan as a liaison officer. Another large figure who was invited over was Huang Fu, who had served as the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Education for the Baiyang government and as its Prime Minister once upon a time. When Chiang Kai-shek came to Nanchang, he wrote to Huang Fu, inviting him twice to come south. On December the 31st, Zhang Qingjiang and Chen Guofu were both invited to Nanchang. Zhang Qingjiang was a member of the KMT's Central Supervisory Committee. After the secondary plenary session of the Second Central Committee, he became chairman of it. He used his authority and colluded with Chen Guofu, the Minister of Organization, to dissolve the Guangzhou Municipal Party Committee, which at that time was being led by left-winger KMT members. They did this by placing confidants in various positions to steal power. Simultaneously, they suppressed workers and peasant movements in Guangdong, even dispatching gangsters to try and kill their leaders and burn down the Provincial and Hong Kong Strike Committee HQ. All of these people gathered at Nanchang, forming an anti-communist cabal backed by Chiang Kai-shek. In January of 1927, these men went up Mount Lushan to a famous hotel called Shanyan, where they plotted. After several days of meetings, as my source argues, mostly based on the advice of Huang Fu, these following decisions were obtained. Number 1. They would enact a policy of separating from the USSR and purging the party of the CCP. Number 2. The NRA must settle the Southeast by forming an alliance with the gentry and merchant class there. Number 3. In their diplomatic efforts, they have to abandon the USSR and ally themselves instead to Japan. Number 4. To increase their military power, they had to unite with Fang Yusung's Kuomintang and Yan Qishan. Upon returning to Nanchang, Chiang Kai-shek took action, first by attacking Borodin. He sent a telegram to Xu Qian, the chairman of the Wuhan Joint Conference, stating Borodin had insulted him in public at Wuhan and demanded he be removed from his advisory position. He also recommended expelling Borodin back to the USSR. The source I'm reading states Chiang Kai-shek had two rationales for going after Borodin. Chiang Kai-shek felt that except for Borodin, the Kuomintang leaders in Wuhan were all politically incompetent. As long as Borodin was there, he could not gain a dominant position. Secondly, he was using Borodin like a scapegoat to hide his real anti-Soviet purpose. At this time, Chiang Kai-shek was being labeled a USSR stooge by the NPA and a Japanese stooge by the CCP. In response, Chiang Kai-shek stated publicly, "Our alliance with Russia was left by the Prime Minister. Although its representatives have been arrogant for a long time and oppressed our party leaders in many ways, I believe that this has nothing to do with the Soviet Union's spirit of treating us equally. No matter what their personal attitudes are, we will never change our relationship with the Soviet Union towards Japan. Why should we unite with the Soviet Union? It is because the Soviet Union can treat China equally. Since the Soviet Union has not given up treating us equally, how can we give up the policy of an alliance with Russia? Not only Japan, but any country. If they can treat China equally, then we will treat them the same way as we treat the Soviet Union. It is not impossible to unite with them. We unite with the Soviet Union to seek freedom and equality for China. It is completely based on the meaning of treating our nation equally, so we must unite with the Soviet Union. If the Soviet Union does not treat us equally and oppresses us in the same way, we will also oppose them in the same way. I have said this for a long time." In regards to the CCP, Chiang Kai-shek stated this to his close confidants. "When I was in Guangzhou, I was always paying attention to the actions of the CCP. I wanted to implement my proposal to overthrow the CCP in Guangzhou. However, I did not do so. I was unable to do so because it could mean the end of the Kuomintang. After the success of the Northern Expedition, Chiang Kai-shek lamented to his confidants this: "Although our army has won a great victory, I still worry the enemy is not at our front, but at our rear. The CCP is causing much trouble within. We must make sure it does not split our party or even collapse our army. There are thorns everywhere." Publicly, Chiang Kai-shek stated this: "Now there is a rumor that I distrust and alienate my communist comrades, and that I have a tendency to oppose them. In fact, it cannot be said that I will not oppose the Communist Party. I have always supported the Communist Party. But that is to say, if the Communist Party becomes strong in the future, and its members are arrogant and tyrannical, I will definitely correct them and punish them. Now many Communist members are actually oppressing the Kuomintang members, making Kuomintang members embarrassed. In this way, I can no longer treat Communist Party members with the same preferential treatment as before. If I still have the same attitude as before, then I am not in the position of the Kuomintang members, and I cannot be a Kuomintang member. Although I am not a Communist Party member, from a revolutionary perspective, I have taken some responsibility for the success or failure of the Communist Party. I am the leader of the Chinese Revolution, not just the leader of the Kuomintang. The Communist Party is a part of the Chinese Revolutionary Forces. Therefore, if Communist Party members do something wrong or act tyrannically, I have the responsibility and the power to intervene and punish them." So as you can see, publicly, Chiang Kai-shek was always walking on eggshells when attacking the CCP. If you know the old boiling frog analogy, it's more or less like Chiang Kai-shek gradually getting the public to attack the CCP. At a ceremony where Li Lijun was appointed chairman of Jiangxi, Chiang Kai-shek once again gave a speech saying that communism was only a method of economic development, which might be applicable to some countries, but if China adopted communism, it would be a great harm. It would only lead to the overthrow of the revolution of China. In late January, Chiang Kai-shek met with Momota Keijiro, a representative sent by Japan's Minister of Finance and the Navy at Lushan. Chiang Kai-shek explained to Keijiro that he understood the importance of the political and economic relationship between Manchuria and Japan. He understood the Japanese had spilt a lot of blood there during the Russo-Japanese War. He believed Manchuria required special consideration, and he hoped the Japanese would correctly evaluate the KMT's struggle to reunify China. Chiang Kai-shek then met with the Japanese Consul General in Zhejiang, Ido Sentaro, explaining he did not only intend to abolish the unequal treaties, but he would try to respect the existing conditions as much as possible, such as guaranteeing the recognition of foreign loans and repayments, and respecting foreign-owned enterprise. After these meetings, Chiang Kai-shek met with the representatives of the Imperial Japanese military, such as Nagami Matsuki and Matsumuro Takeyoshi. It was Daiji Ta who had set up these meetings. Chiang Kai-shek began the talks by making it clear that KMT would not work with the CCP and was willing to work with Japan to prevent the spread of communism in China. Chiang Kai-shek also met with the Japanese politician Yamamoto Jotaro, who would go on to say in Beijing that he believed the Generalissimo was an outstanding military leader. Needless to say, as my source would put it, Chiang Kai-shek was closely colluding with Japanese imperialism. He was also establishing contacts with the United States. He dispatched Wang Jingting to Shanghai to meet with the American consul general there. Wang Jingting told him that the KMT had washed their hands of the communists, and that there would be no more incidents such as the one that had befallen Hankow. The American consul general in Guangzhou was likewise contacted through the finance minister of Guangdong, Kong Changqi. What the American consuls told their government was this: "If the powers want to drive the Soviets out of China, they should establish direct contact with Chiang Kai-shek." Chiang Kai-shek also publicly expressed regret to numerous nations for incidents such as the one in Nanjing. He was gaining a reputation as being the only leader in China capable of restoring order amongst all of the chaos. Many of these foreign diplomats privately told Chiang Kai-shek that if he really wanted to brush shoulders with them, well, he had to purge the communists, and soon. To truly purge the communists, Chiang Kai-shek reached deals with the bourgeoisie of Jiangsu and Zhejiang. They would support him economically if he helped suppress the worker movements in Shanghai. They funded Chiang Kai-shek some 500,000 yuan in early March. Then on the 29th, the Shanghai Commercial Federation pledged 5 million yuan, with another 6 million on April the 1st. Around this time, Chiang Kai-shek secretly sent Wang Baoling, the deputy commander of the First Army, Yang Hu, chief of the Special Affairs Department of the General HQ, and Chen Chun, the director of the Political Department of the Eastern Route Army, to Shanghai in disguise to meet Huang Jinrong. Huang Jinrong was the chief detective working in the French concession of Shanghai. He also happened to be one of the top 3 gangsters working under Du Yuesheng of the Green Gang. Huang Jinrong summoned Du Yuesheng and the other Green Gang leader, Zhang Xiaolin, as they all discussed how to purge the communists. The Green Gang leaders seized the opportunity to help the KMT. They began monitoring the CCP, arming their gang members, and began attacking anyone who was picketing. They formed the China Progress Association, which in reality was just Green Gang members. Their association proceeded to attack the Shanghai General Labor Union, providing the perfect pretext for Chiang Kai-shek to act. On April the 1st, Wang Jingwei returned to Shanghai from abroad. By the 3rd, Chiang Kai-shek telegrammed that Wang Jingwei was reinstated, and he held secret talks with him. On the 8th, Chiang Kai-shek organized a Shanghai Provisional Political Committee, stipulating it would decide all military, political, and financial decisions and would replace the Shanghai Special Municipality Provincial Government that had been established after the 3rd Shanghai Worker Uprising. On the 9th, he unleashed martial law prohibiting assemblies, strikes, and marches, and he established the Songhe Martial Law Command, with Bai Zhongxi and Zhou Fangqi as commander and deputy commander. Chiang Kai-shek then takes his leave for Nanjing, leaving the job to Bai Zhongxi, who would supervise a coup in Shanghai. In a rather vain attempt, Chen Duxiu tells the CCP to ease up on the anti-Chiang Kai-shek stuff at this time, but then it's announced to them that Chen Duxiu had managed to form a deal with Wang Jingwei. Chiang Kai-shek sent word from Nanjing to carry out the purge in a very execute Order 66 kind of fashion. April the 12th takes a wild turn in Shanghai. In the early morning, a signal is raised over a warship anchored near the Guaochang Temple. Hundreds of well-armed Green Gang members, triads, and some secret agents wearing blue shorts and white cloth armbands with a black gong on them dispersed from the French concession in several cars. From 1 to 5 a.m., they attacked the picketing workers in Jiaibei, Nanshu, Wuxi, Wusang, Hongkou, and other districts. The workers resisted and immediately caused fierce street battles to break out everywhere. The 26th Army of the NRA, an old Sun Chuanfang unit that had recently defected, came forcibly to confiscate guns while stating they were mediating an internal strife amongst the workers. Over 2,700 armed workers in Shanghai were disarmed. More than 120 were killed, with another 180 injured. The Shanghai General Labor Union Club and all of their associated pickets in the districts were occupied. Within the foreign concessions, foreign military and police forces arrested more than 1,000 CCP members and workers who were immediately handed over to Chiang Kai-shek's men. On the morning of the 13th, the workers from Shanghai's tobacco, silk factories, tram, municipal administration, postal services, sailors, and various other industries went on strike. Over 200,000 workers took to the streets, and the Shanghai General Labor Union held a mass rally in Qingyuan Road Square in Jiaibei with over 100,000 participants. They held a quick conference calling for resolutions. Their first resolution was to hand over their weapons. Secondly, those who destroyed their unions should be severely punished. Thirdly, the families of those killed needed to be compensated. Fourth, the protests should be made against the imperialists within the concessions. Fifth, a telegram needed to be sent out to the central government, then the whole nation, and then the world to demand assistance. Lastly, the military authorities should be responsible for protecting the Shanghai trade unions. After the conference, the masses marched upon the headquarters of the 2nd Division of the 26th NRA Army along the Baoshan Road to petition for the release of their comrades and for their weapons to be returned to them. They marched for a kilometer, and upon reaching the Sendeli area of the Baoshan Road, soldiers of the 2nd Division rushed out and opened fire upon them, killing more than 100 on the spot. It was said that Baoshan Road was flooded with blood. That afternoon, Chiang Kai-shek's forces occupied the Shanghai General Labor Union and General Command of the Shanghai Workers. They closed down and disbanded numerous revolutionary organizations and carried out searches and murders. Within 3 days after the Shanghai incident, more than 300 Shanghai CCP members were killed, another 500 were arrested, and 5,000 went missing. Like I said in the previous podcast on this very subject, I will leave it to you as to what missing meant. On the 15th of April, the Kuomintang and Guangzhou launched their own coup. On that day, more than 2,000 CCP members and their supporters were arrested, 200 trade unions were closed. This would all be followed by similar activities in Jiangsu, Zhejiang, Anhui, Fujian, and Guangxi, where the CCP members were all purged. The NPA in the north would likewise crack down on their communists. Li Daijiao had been placed on the Beiyang government's list of the most wanted back in 1926, following the March 18th massacre. Since then, he was out hiding in the Soviet embassy in Beijing, continuing to lead political maneuvers against the warlords. When the First United Front collapsed as a result of Chiang Kai-shek's purges, Jiang Zeolin ordered troops to raid the Soviet embassy. Li Daijiao and his wife and daughter were all arrested. Among 19 other communists, Li Daijiao was executed on April 28th of 1927 by strangulation. One of the behemoths who ushered in the New Culture movement and was a founder of the CCP had become one of its greatest martyrs. The First United Front was no more, and in response to this, the CCP declared, "Chiang Kai-shek has become an open enemy of the national revolution, a tool of imperialism, and the culprit of the white terror of massacring workers, peasants, and revolutionary masses." This was followed by a call to mobilize, unite, and form a solid front to fight the warlords and the KMT. In May of 1927, the Communist International issued the May Emergency Directive to the CCP. Here is a direct transcript of that list. Number 1. Without land revolution, victory is impossible. Without land revolution, the Kuomintang Central Committee will become a pitiful plaything in the hands of unreliable generals. Excessive behavior must be opposed, but not by the army, but through the peasant associations. Number 2. It is necessary to make concessions to the artisans, merchants, and small landowners, and to unite with these strata. Only the land of large and medium-sized landowners should be confiscated. The land of officers and soldiers should not be touched. Number 3. Some old leaders of the KMT Central Committee will waver and compromise. We should recruit more new leaders of workers and peasants from below to join the KMT Central Committee, to renew the KMT's upper echelons. Number 4. Mobilize 20,000 Communist Party members and 50,000 revolutionary workers and peasants in Hunan and Hubei to form several new armies and build our own reliable army. Number 5. A revolutionary military tribunal headed by prominent Kuomintang and non-communists should be established to punish those officers who persecute workers and peasants. Wang Jingwei obtained this document from Lou Yi, the representative of the Communist International. The high-ranking officials of the Kuomintang believed that this was the Communist International's armed seizure of power and that they determined to purge the party. Thus began the Wuhan-Nanjing War. However, as we saw, Wang Jingwei would perform his own purge of the communists on May the 21st as he found out the Soviets were pushing the CCP to seize control over his regime. In order to resist the KMT's massacres, or, as the CCP put it, the White Terror, the CCP Central Committee reorganized itself on July the 12th of 1927. Chen Duxiu and other early CCP leaders who had insisted on compromising with the KMT were dismissed from their posts and labeled right-wing capitulants. The CCP formed an alliance with the left-wing KMT members, forming a quasi-second front where they planned an armed uprising in Nanchang, hoping it would spark a large peasant uprising. They were led by He Long and Joan Li. He Long, an ethnic Jujia and Hunanese native, was born to a poor peasant family. He received no formal education and he worked as a cowherder during his youth. When he was 20 years old, he killed a local Qing tax assessor who had killed his uncle for defaulting on his taxes. From this point, he fled and he became an outlaw. Apparently, his signature weapon was a butcher knife. In 1918, he raised a volunteer revolutionary army aligned with the emerging Hunanese warlords. By 1920, he joined the NRA and he began brushing shoulders with CCP members. During the Northern Expedition, he commanded the 1st Division of the 9th Corps and he served under Zhang Fuquay. By late 1926, he joined the CCP, and when the First United Front collapsed, he joined up with the CCP and he took command of their 20th Corps, the first column of the Red Army. Joan Li was born in Huai'an in Jiangsu province in 1898. He was born to a scholarly family, many of them officials, but like many during the late 19th century in China, they suffered tremendously. Joan Li was adopted by his father's youngest brother, Zhou Yigan, who was also ill with tuberculosis. The adoption was more of a way to cover Zhou Yigan's lack of an heir. Zhou Yigan died soon after, and Joan Li was raised by his widow, Chen. He received a traditional literacy education. Joan Li's biological mother died when he was 9, and Chen would die when he was 10. He then fell into the care of his uncle, Zhou Yigang, in Fengtian. Joan Li continued his education at the Nankai Middle School, who were adopting an educational model used at the Phillips Academy in the United States. Joan Li excelled at debate, acting, drama, the sort of skill sets needed for public service. Like many Chinese students of his day, he went to Japan in 1917 for further studies. He tried to learn Japanese to enter Japanese schools, but failed to do so. He also faced a lot of racism in Japan, prompting him to become quite an anti-Japanese person. While in Japan, he became very interested in news about the Russian Revolution, and this led him to read works from Chen Duxiao. In 1919, he returned to Tianjin, where it is said he led students to protest during the May 4th movement, though a lot of modern scholars do not believe he did. Joan Li then became a university student at Nankai and an activist. He led the Awakening Society, and he would find himself quickly arrested. During this time, he became familiar with Li Dajiao and Chen Duxiao. Then in 1920, he went to study in Marseille. In 1921, he joined a Chinese communist cell within Paris. Then in 1922, he helped found a European branch of the CCP. When the First United Front began, he joined the KMT, and in 1924, he was summoned back to China. He joined the political department of the Whampoa Military Academy. He was made the Whampoa's chief political officer, but he also took the post as secretary of the CCP of Guangdong, Guangxi, and he served as a major general. Soon he became the secretary of the CCP's Guangdong Provincial Committee. In 1925, he got his first taste of military command against Chen Jiongming, accompanying the Whampoa cadets as a political officer. When Chen Jiongming regrouped and attacked Guangzhou again that year, Chiang Kai-shek personally appointed Joan Li as director of the First Corps Political Department. Soon thereafter, he was appointed a KMT party representative with the position of chief commissar of the First Corps. With the newfound position, he began appointing communists as commissars in 4 out of 5 corps divisions. However, his work at Whampoa came to an end during the Zhongshan warship incident as Chiang Kai-shek began purging communists from high-ranking positions. Whampoa was a significant part of his career, providing him with skills and a network. Until the First United Front's collapse, he worked to form numerous armed CCP groups. He was sent to Shanghai, where he was part of the effort to stage an uprising there. During the massacre, he was arrested and nearly killed if it was not for the work of Xiao Shu, a representative of the 26th Army, who released him. From there, he fled to Hankow, where he participated in the CCP's 5th National Congress. When Wang Jingwei unleashed his purge, Joan Li went into hiding. When the CCP called for an uprising in Nanchang, Joan Li, as a CCP secretary, was in a unique position to lead it. The CCP designated Joan Li, Li Lisan, Yun Daoying, and Peng Pai to form a front committee. The troops available to them were the 24th and 10th Divisions of the 11th Army of the 2nd Front Army, the entire 20th Army, the 73rd and 75th Regiment of the 25th Division, and the 4th Army, with part of the Officer Training Corps of the 3rd Army of the 5th Front Army led by Zhu De. Hu Long was the commander-in-chief of the 2nd Front Army. Yu Ting was his deputy and acting frontline commander. Joan Li was the chief of staff, with Liu Bochang as director of the political directorate. At this time, the main force of the 3rd Army of the 5th Front Army of the Kuomintang Wuhan government was located in Jiangxi, Jian. The main force of the 9th Army was located in Qingxiang, in Lingchuan, and the main force of the 6th Army was advancing to Nanchang via Pingxiang. The rest of the 2nd Front Army was also located in Zhujiang. Only the 5th Front Army Guard Regiment and parts of the 3rd, 6th, and 9th Armies, totaling more than 3,000 people, were stationed in Nanchang and its suburbs. The CCP Front Committee decided to launch an uprising on August the 1st before the arrival of the reinforcements. At about 2 a.m. on August the 1st, the Nanchang uprising began. The 1st and 2nd Divisions of the 20th Army launched attacks against the defenders of the Old Fantai Yamen, Daishu Yuan Street, and the Nuxing Railway Station. Meanwhile, the 24th Division of the 11th Army attacked the Songbaixiang Catholic Church, Xingyingfang, and Baihaojiu. The bloody battle lasted until dawn, inflicting 3,000 casualties and capturing more than 5,000 small arms of various types, 700,000 rounds of ammunition, and a few cannons. During the afternoon, the 73rd Regiment and the 25th Division stationed at Mahuling, 3 battalions of the 75th Regiment and a machine gun company of the 74th Regiment, led by Ni Rongjian and Zhou Shide, revolted and came to Nanchang by the 2nd of August. For the moment, it seemed the CCP had achieved a grand success in Nanchang. The CCP then began proclaiming that Chiang Kai-shek and Wang Jingwei had betrayed the revolution and that of Dr. Sun Yat-sen's 3 principles by choosing to side with the imperialists and the warlords. Meanwhile, the CCP-aligned military units began to gather in Nanchang, requiring a reorganization. It was decided the uprising army would continue to use the designation of the Second Front Army of the NRA, with Hu Long serving as the commander-in-chief and Yu Ting as his deputy. Yu Ting would also command the 11th Army, consisting of the 24th, 25th, and 10th Divisions. Ni Rongjian would be his CCP party representative. Hu Long would command the 20th Army, consisting of the 1st and 2nd Divisions, with Liao Changwu as the CCP party representative for him. Joan Li, with Zhu De as his deputy, would lead the 9th Army, with Zhu Kuqing as the CCP party representative for them. Altogether, they were 20,000 men strong, and now they were very well armed. There was to be a great celebration. It seemed that this was a grand moment for the CCP, and they would finally take the center stage. I would just like to take this time to remind you all that this podcast is only made possible through the efforts of Kings and Generals over at YouTube. Please go subscribe to Kings and Generals over at YouTube and continue to help us produce this content by checking out www.patreon.com/kingsandgenerals. And hey, don't forget about our sister podcast over at the Pacific War Week by Week podcast, written and narrated by me. And if after all that, if you're still hungry for some more history, why don't you check out my personal channel, the Pacific War Channel, found at YouTube and all major podcast platforms. Over on YouTube, I just released a full documentary on General William Rupertus during World War II. As for the podcast front, I am now on part 7 of an ongoing series about the North Africa campaign during World War II. Also, if you'd like to help me even more, please check out my Patreon account at www.patreon.com/thepacificwarchannel. For as little as $2 a month, you get access to the exclusive Patreon podcast, which now has more than, I think, 25 exclusive episodes. You also get early access to all the content I make, and you get voting rights for all the subjects I will tackle next. The Chinese Civil War had officially just begun. Chiang Kai-shek and Wang Jingwei purged their respective regimes of communists, unleashing a white terror. In a scramble to survive, the CCP reorganized itself and sought revenge, with their first target being Nanchang. From there until 1949, the CCP and KMT would fight for the future of China.